Hello and good morning Internet. This is Michael from Trike Bike, and today I've got a new arrival just turned up. This is a new tricycle which is going to be introduced into Australia. So this will be my first time looking at it along with you. So let's open this box and see what we've got. Okay, let's first of all have a look at our packaging. So we've got some very strong supports in here to stop everything moving around the back of the box during shipping. A lot of foam padding I'll remove. Okay, baskets. That might be attached to something. No, it's not, so we'll pull that out. We've got our seat here, nicely packaged up. A smaller front basket. Our front mudguard. So we have quite a few cable ties holding things together. I'm just going to go through and snip those. So these are our front forks. They've got a spacer in there just to protect the forks during shipping. Just going to go ahead now and basically lift the bike up. As it's arrived, it's upside down, so I think I've opened the wrong side of the box, but that doesn't matter. We'll lift it out fairly easily. Okay, I've got this secure. Let's lift her out. Okay, while we're half out, I'm just going to start to remove some of this packaging. Now this is a pre-release tricycle, so it's come without any identification labels on it. I tell a lie. It does have its identification. Vonride is a new importer to Australia, and we've been asked to have a look at their first tricycle and do an honest review. I think where I am now, I'm going to put the bike back on the ground, but I'm going to turn it over the right way. What I'll do is lift this up, I'll close the box around it and put it back down on the box. Our front wheel can come out, that's it. I've also got another rear wheel spacer in the back here. I believe that can just slide out. Just give this a bit of a pull. Just going to close the box and make myself a little platform for putting it together and rolling it over. That will do for now. We'll just continue to remove some of our packaging. We can swing our front around. Just let me remove this strap. We can now bring the front around. Okay, I like that. It's got a good safety lock on it. Lock it in place. Now we can go back to our handlebars. Okay, we're just going to sort out our front handlebars. So this comes with a traditional style gooseneck for this type of trike, so we can insert it in. I'll tighten that 6mm. So I'll leave it a little bit loose just for the moment so we can go back and position everything. Now normally you would fit the handlebars to that gooseneck before doing this. We have just got enough room to do it. Quite often you don't. So I'm just going to position that in. We're going to rotate the handlebars around just to line them up with the front forks. A bit more. Surprising how well that's locking even without doing it up tight. So I'll just continue to tighten up. Now I've got it nearly aligned. We'll lock our handlebar in place. Okay. I'm just going to do up the clamp. That's looking good. I notice a little bit of movement, not movement, but resistance in the steering head. So we'll have a look at that later. But it could just be that the bearing's a bit dry or perhaps a bit tight. I always like to go for a ride before I make any adjustments like that. Oh, we've got some RFIDs to turn it on. That's a nice feature. This is our display, which we'll need to attach to the handlebars shortly. I'm just going to do a quick clean up first. I'm just going to fit the display. I'll do it now rather than having it float around where it could possibly get damaged. So we're going to use a 3mm Allen key. So while we do this, we've got this tricycle by Vonride is just coming into the Australian market. As I mentioned previously, they've asked me to have a look at one to do a review so customers can get a bit of an idea about what the tricycle is like and how it works. I'm always happy to do that. Looking at this, it's going to be not an entry-level tricycle, but it's sort of more towards that lower end of the market. It's not a premium tricycle, but that's also reflected by the price. So not everyone can afford several $1,000s for a tricycle as an entry point. But yeah, it's overall fairly reasonable quality. We've got the typical Shimano gearing system. Okay, one thing this doesn't have, which I'm noticing first off, is a bell. Tricycles in Australia require a bell by law. We've got a twist grip throttle, so it's a half a twist grip. This display here, the keypad may be upside down the way it's been supplied because the M is looking like a W at the moment. Okay, I've just got the handlebars mounted. I've just put the display on. There's a couple of rubber spacers go in there. A little bit perplexed, the keypad here, which normally has an M and up and down arrows, has a W at the moment, so I think that's been put on wrong and may need to be rotated. And it would make sense that it's wrong because the little bolt here that holds it in place is at the top. Now normally they're at the bottom. So I'm just going to take that off now and swap it around. Very easy to do. Now this tricycle, which I'm evaluating for Vonride, they want to enter the Australian market. They're not a premium manufacturer or a mid-market manufacturer. They're positioning themselves as a entry-level / slightly higher than that. So just let's have a look at the handlebars here. Handlebars are good, but there's no movement backwards or forwards. So we'll see how that works when we get on the bike. There's a little bit of tightness in the fork rotation. That could be the bearing is over tightened or it hasn't been lubricated properly. I don't worry about that until after I do the first ride because it could settle in quite nicely. We've got a bit of movement there. I'll have to tighten up this clamp or that clamp. We've got hydraulic disc brakes with brake locks, so we'll see how they perform. We've got a half twist throttle. I can see here on the right hand side we've got drive and reverse. We've got a horn and our keypad over here. We've got a 7-speed Shimano system, which is fairly conventional for this market segment. Okay, let's move on and we'll fit the front wheel and the front mudguard. Okay, I've been digging around looking for the hardware for our front mudguard, and I've discovered that you actually get a fairly good selection of tools with this bike. So I've got a shifter, spanner, I've got Allen key set, a plate punched out with all the different bolt sizes, a second Allen key set. Of course you've got your pedals, reflectors and everything else you need. So that's a welcome surprise. I'm just going to go through now and work out which bolts are needed for the front mudguard. So I'm going through this at the same time as you're viewing me. This is the first time I've assembled one of these bikes, this model, and from what I can tell we have 3 packets of nuts and bolts and they all seem to be the same, just looking at them through the plastic. So I don't know how we'll work this out, but we'll keep going and see what we end up with. We'll just fit this front mudguard. I'm just going to put it in place and I'll leave it loose for now. I just like to put it on to get it on before the tyre, and otherwise it's too hard to get the mudguard on after the tyre is on. Down in our brakes here there's a little plastic insert. That's to stop you squeezing the brake handle and the pads crushing together. So I'll remove that and we can get our front wheel ready to fit into the tricycle. Now of course the disc brake will go on this side, the left hand side. I'll release these bolts until they're just hanging on. Release the nuts, I meant to say, sorry. So we've got 2 washers on this, a conventional washer and a safety washer. And the safety washer is designed to go into a couple of holes which are on the forks. So let's lift this up. I've got it in position. Now I'm going to leave these nuts loose until we put the bike down on the ground, and that'll push the tyre up. Speaking of tyres, they're completely deflated. I can't see any name brand on them, but all around they're a Fat Tyre A20 by 4 inch. So this is going to make it one of the cheapest 20 by 4 inch tricycles in the market. So I'm going to start by putting some air in each tyre. Now for trikes with tyres about this size, I always start with 16 psi. As we're inflating, we want to make sure that the tyre is sitting fairly evenly on the rim. That's 10 psi. Just going to have a look around. We can see that we've got the tyre coming off the rim. So I'm going to swap sides here. So we've got a bulge there. I'm just going to deflate the tyre, and that'll allow me to push it back under with my thumb and get it seated before we reinflate. These seem to be a very shallow rim, so I suspect mounting the tyre and getting it to seat is going to be a problem for some people. But now I've got enough air out of it, I can push it back in. We'll try the reinflation again. So it is sitting properly on this side, and for the moment on this side we'll just take it up to 16 psi, which we're at right now. Now I may have to take the mudguard off, or the bolt out anyway, because I've just discovered we've got our front light. So that looks to be a light and a horn built into one, but I don't remember seeing a horn switch. Yes, I did. There's a horn switch on there. So let's just pop off that bolt. We'll take that off and we'll get our light positioned and then refit the mudguard. So what I've done here is I've just gone and found a slightly bigger washer and fitted it over the top so I can make sure that it clamps the front light firmly. I'm just going to nip that up and get it roughly in position. I'm going to lift the mudguard back up. That's it. Put everything in place, and I'm just going to tighten it up. The light has adjustment, so you can tip it backwards and forwards, which is great. While I'm up this end, we might as well go ahead and fit the front basket. As I mentioned previously, this is my first time doing the assembly as well, and I may have fitted the front light in the wrong position. I know a lot of tricycles don't fit it there, because when the suspension gets taken up, the light can come and hit into the bottom of the basket. So let's just fit the basket. We'll have another look at the light. It may have to come to the front of the basket, but let's start by removing these 4 bolts from the front of the tricycle. Now, frame quality. All of this looks quite good. The paint is good, the welding is good. I'd be quite happy with this tricycle if it was mine. The fit and finish is pretty good. Okay, to fit the front basket, we need to position it on the front, move all the cables out of the road. This can sometimes be a 2-person job if you don't have enough hands, but just get it started in the first place. Just going to get all 4 bolts started. We'll stand back and have a look. Okay, all of our cables are out of the road. They're not locked in behind. I'm going to have a look at the basket and make sure it's level. Now we're at that stage, I can go and tighten everything up. Now, one thing to say is this front basket is smaller than a lot of other front baskets on our tricycle, but it's still a front basket, so I'm sure it's going to do the job of carrying everything for you. Now we'll look at this front light, and yes, I'm convinced that I've got it in the wrong position. So let me just sneak in here if I can. No, I can't get in. I'll just use a hand tool and I'll just remove the front light, and we'll see if it can be positioned on the front of the basket. There's actually a bracket there for it. So let's see. we can probably massage that cable around to get it in place. There'd be enough room there, but our light is sticking out a long way from the front of the basket. Something that I am not overly happy with, to be honest, because it's only going to get knocked off or broken. Let's position this back in here and see what happens. See what happens if we drop that low. Yeah, I might be inclined to give that a go. So we'll put it all back together in its spot here. So I'm just going to, rather than have the light sitting right at the top, I'm going to move it down so it sits more at the bottom. And we'll see how that looks. So I'll position it downwards. Yeah, I think that might be the place. Let's get it all tight. Nothing's permanent there yet. I'm just putting it in place and see what it looks like. Yep, I think we're going to be okay with that. If worse comes to worse, when the suspension comes up, the light will hit the top of the frame there, and then we'll have to move it out the front. While I'm doing all this, I just come across the battery. This is in the silverfish format, which is the shape of this container, which is very, very popular. We've got a 48 volt, 15 amp hour battery, so 720 watt hours. So that should be enough for probably 50 kilometres or more, just using throttle. Our charging port is on the side, so it's a 2.1 charging port. Quality-wise, all of these cases are the same. It's hard to know unless you open up the battery. Okay, so it's made by Woteam Power, and it's got a UN 38.3 rating on it. I can't see anything else on the battery, but we'll look into this and let you know more about it shortly. I'm just going to put it on charge while we're assembling. I'm just going to fit these Mudguard brackets now. I can't find the correct hardware for them, so I've just got a couple of bolts out of our spare parts. As I mentioned before, this is a prototype. It's pre-production, so I suspect, based on our feedback and as they go into full production, they'll make some changes to how they do everything, and we'll end up with a more professional product in the end. An example of being pre-production is that I've ended up with 2 front baskets. I don't know why, but I'll gratefully accept the second basket in case anything ever happens to this. But it just shows me that they're just working their way through this new model. Okay, I'm just going to fit our pedals. Our pedals have got left and right stamped into the axles. So as you were sitting on the bike, on the right hand side goes the right hand pedal, and it has a right hand thread. Left hand one goes on that side of the bike, and it screws in with a left hand thread. So let's just get this on. We'll get it started. It's a 15mm spanner for nearly all of the pedals. It's interesting, they've also got a sticker on the end. So if you look on the end of the pedal, it's got a little left and a little right. So that makes it easy to identify. I'm just going to rotate that backwards. No, I think our gears are wrong. I'll go over to the other side. Okay, I've got the pedal up. I can now fit this in place. Left hand pedal, left hand thread. We've got those pedals up tight. We can now move on and I'll fit the seat. Okay, our seat has got some protective covers on it, so we can just take those off. The seat is already securely mounted to its seat post, so that's this part here. We can just tip that up and push it into its proper position. Remove these little bags. And now the seat goes into the seat clamp area. So let's just put it in position roughly. I'm just going to put it down. That's way too loose, so I'm going to tighten it up. About 4 or 5 turns till it's firm. I'm just going to clamp that over for now. Our seat will need to be adjusted. We can lift the backrest up and down. We can tilt the seat backwards and forwards by undoing the screw, and to fit the battery and remove it, there's a little lever on the back of the seat which enables you to tip the seat forward. So you can replace the battery without removing the seat from the seat post, which is a great idea. These little bags are actually pretty good. If they last, they'll work well just for storing parts in. I'm going to keep those. Okay, I've just rotated the tricycle around so we can get a better look at the back end of the tricycle. Fairly conventional in its setup, so we've got hydraulic disc brakes on either side, so that's a good starting point, especially for an entry-level tricycle. We've got our derailleur and gear cluster over here. Because the gear selector's not set, the chain's half falling off. We've got a differential in the middle. We've got a secondary drive for this rear motor. Now that's really quite tight, so I'm going to check that by rotating everything to make sure it's in the right position. If it's not in the right position, then there's a couple of adjustments we can make to make sure that chain is not so tight. The motor wise, I can tell it's a 48 volt, and from the serial number, I think it's telling me it's a 250 watt. From the size of the motor, it looks like it's a 250 watt. It's really detrimental to have the chain too tight because it pulls everything together and it wrecks all the bearings. It needs to have a little bit of movement. I can already tell by looking at that now and pulling on the chain that it is way too tight. So what I'm going to do before I fit the basket, I'm going to release the nuts on either side of the shaft which goes through for the motor. I'm just going to loosen them off a little bit to get a little bit less tightness, so I'm going to make the chain here a little bit looser. I'm going to try out my shifter that came with the bike. So I'll release this nut on the motor axle. I'm going to do the same on this other side. And I can see there's some little 10mm adjusting nuts there. I'm going to loosen them a couple of turns. So I'm going to loosen off this side, I'm going to loosen off the other side. What I want to do is to be able to pull the motor back so we've got a little bit more free play in the chain. So that's pretty good where I've got it now. Oh, that's much better. I'm going to do the same on the other side and just tighten it up. Okay, I can put our caps back on. Much better. We've now got a bit of free play in the chain. You want about 8mm or so. Now we can go ahead and fit our rear basket. So we'll take off this hardware. Okay, our rear basket, there doesn't seem to be a front or a back. We have to work it out by carefully aligning these holes to try and work out where the mudguards would sit. Or actually no, I stand corrected. I've put the basket on and it's hitting the frame before it aligns with the hole. So this is definitely going to be the wrong way around. So I'm going to turn it 180 degrees, put it back into position. That's much better. So you can't put the basket on back to front. It'll tell you by not fitting. So that's a good idea. I'm going to drop these long bolts in. We'll then go around, fit the nuts and tighten everything up. The basket itself is fairly lightweight. There's no tailgate on it, but I probably wouldn't expect a tailgate on a tricycle of this price. So we have to keep reminding ourselves that we're comparing this tricycle to premium models, and it's just not the same. This is a entry-level / mid-market tricycle. I'm just going to go around and tighten up these rear basket bolts. Okay, that's in place. We've now got our mudguards to go on. Our mudguards are a design I'm not overly familiar with, but they come in a packet of 2. They're taped together, and I'm going to believe that one goes here, one goes here. These are our mudguards, and we'll just check the length. They look to be the same difference in distance from each end, so I don't believe it matters which way they go. They'll still be located correctly. So let's go ahead, we'll get the bracket fitted up first, and we'll go ahead and put the mudguards on. Now, I'm not overly convinced that I've been given the right hardware for this tricycle, because it looks like these are held on with M6 bolts, and I've been given M5 in the little care package I've received. So I'm just going to replace these with M6. Okay, back again with the nut. So there's a little bit of movement in there, of course backwards and forwards, but up and down as well. For now, however, leave everything loose until we get the mudguards on. Okay, might have an issue with that one. It's touching the wheel, even at its uppermost. I need to check that there's not a front and a back. This could be a bit embarrassing if I put the wrong one on. No, they seem to be the same. Let's just position the mudguard first and we'll see. So that one there's got lots of clearance. It looks good. I'm pretty convinced these are the same. They're not going to go like that. That would make a lot more interesting, but it's definitely not the right way to go. That's definitely not correct, so I'm going to have to put that to one side, and we'll come back to the mudguards and the mudguard brackets shortly. As I say, the beauty of doing this is I've never seen this tricycle before. You're doing it at exactly the same time I'm doing it. Now there is a slight difference in those, not much. Yeah, I don't think it'd be enough. It's just a very slight variance in the bending. I don't think that's going to be enough to make one bracket fit and the other bracket not to fit. I'm just going to leave that for now. We'll go ahead and move on to the next task, because that bracket is definitely not going to fit that way. It has to fit that way. Here we go. Let's have a look at this. Okay, I've just worked it out. The bracket actually goes on the inside of the guard, not the outside. So we can start by just roughly mounting these now with the brackets. That makes absolute sense. I'm glad you're with me to this to follow this journey. Okay, I'm back with you again. I've just mounted these brackets underneath, and we're just going to fit them into position, and look at that, they're going to fit perfectly. So we'll just put these in. There's plenty of adjustment on them now because we've got room to move everything around. Okay, doing this a second time, I would fit the mudguards to the actual basket before I fit the basket onto the bike. That way it just gives you a little bit more room to work around everything. and not drop your bolts and your nuts like I do. So now we've got the room to position this correctly and give it good clearance around the tyre. I'm happy with that. I'm going to do the same on the other side. Okay, we're back again on another day. Ran out of time yesterday. These mudguards aren't lining up very well, but the brackets for them are very easily bent. So we can just gently lift it up. Just using the palm of my hand here. Just going to lift them up so we've got good clearance all around. If I wasn't happy, I could actually move them up and down to get better clearance. That'll do us for now. The rear basket. The rear basket also has a little bag that goes in there. So it's a very simple basket. It's just got a firm bottom on it. The fabric goes inside and it's got Velcro that just peels over the top, and you squeeze the sides together so the Velcro lines up. So it's fairly basic, but you'll find that it does the job quite well. There's no lid on it, so it's just an open container just to stop things from falling out. It's quite nice. A little bit more about this tricycle now I've had a chance to assemble most of it. Aluminium frame, looks to be really well made. It's got good welding. Yeah, I'd say the frame is really good. The rear axle underneath here, the whole rear axle assembly is steel, it's not aluminium. And of course things like your baskets, front and rear, are also steel, they're not aluminium. The seat has got an adjustable seat back on it. It's pretty typical of all of the seats of this style in the market. I think they're made by 200 different people. And shortly I'm going to spin the bike around and we'll make an adjustment on the front. I've decided to move the light from where it is to put it up on the basket. So join me while I do that. So we're just going to remove the light. Refit that mudguard, and I'll just move the light to the front here. We'll just find the best way to make the cable go through. And that'll give us enough room. Okay, I'm back. I've just sourced another bolt nut and large washer. I could use the 5mm ones that came with the bike, but I really don't believe that they're the correct size. So I'm just going to tighten this up gently. We'll just get it roughly in position here. I'm hoping they change the design of the light in the future so it doesn't hang out the front so much. With this cable hanging down, I'm just going to put a couple of cable ties through the mounting positions on the bottom of the basket, and that's going to just hold everything nice and secure. When you're tightening cable ties to wires, you don't want to have them like a tourniquet on your leg. You want to have still just a little bit of movement in there. Otherwise you can actually do them up that tight that you will eventually damage the cable itself. Okay, that looks good there. I've got a couple of little plastic covers for the front wheel axle. I can't put them on yet, I just remembered because I haven't tightened the front wheel completely. Okay, I've tightened the front wheel, so these little caps, plastic caps, go over here. They can be a pretty hard push to get on there. I quite often will just warm them up, leave them out in the sun for a few minutes. We've also got some reflectors. So these go on, they slide onto the forks, onto the spokes. I'm talking rubbish today. So you just fit them around like that and lock them into place. They can go really either way. It doesn't matter so much. It's just a matter of getting them into a position that you're happy with and let them lock in place firmly. They seem to last quite a few years. They're not my favourite reflector, but they're easy to fit. They work well and they maintain legal compliance. On the rear wheels, I'm again going to fit the reflector. Normally you'd locate the valve stem, which is here, and then go and fit it 180 degrees out. It's locked into position. We've also got two plastic domes. They actually go onto the rear wheel axle nuts. So get them on, give them a good tap with your hand and get them on nice and firmly. They go on both sides. Okay, I'm now going to lift our bike up off the box, which I've used for the assembly, and put it on the ground level, and we'll go in and check everything that's remaining. Okay, first thing while I'm on the ground here is I'm just going to check the front wheel alignment. I know it's out, so position the front wheel as if you're riding perfectly straight and forward. I've put the wheel in between my legs and I'm just going to rotate the handlebar stem around to get it into the right position. There's a little bit of free play in there, which means I need to go ahead and retighten everything. Now it's in the correct position. Release this handlebar. .6mm, not a 5mm. Just tighten this up. Okay, lock the handlebar back in place. There's a bit of movement coming out of this clamp. So I'm just going to release this, tighten up the clamp and re-clamp it again. Still a little bit too loose. Okay, that's nice and tight. I'm just going to check now if we've got any movement. Everything appears to be good there now. Okay, I'm just going to refit the battery. So I put the key in, I'm going to lift the seat forward and we insert the back of the battery on the battery rail and just let it slide down into place. You must be extremely careful there that you don't actually drop it, otherwise you can end up eventually damaging the bottom of the battery. Okay, while I'm here, just check the brakes. Okay, they've got the brakes on the wrong side for Australia. So the front wheel they've got on the left-hand side, and that's always the opposite for Australia. That's something we can look at in the future. But for now, we've got the battery in. We'll just go ahead and fire up the bike, see what it looks like. Okay, a little bit of experimentation here because I don't have a manual with this bike, but our screen is off, our battery is turned on. Let's press and hold the M button and we've now got the screen coming up. There's a bit of a display on there. I'll just peel the plastic off to make it easier to read. Now I don't know what that's currently saying. It says C. So it must be asking for a code. So you can enter a code using the keypad, or you've got your RFID chips here. So let's just remove them. If I can get them off. So you think of these as a little key. So they're called an NFC key. So let's just fire up the screen again. We'll press it on. I didn't press it long enough, so I'll press and hold it. Put the screen, the tab right next to the screen, and now the screen has come up and is visible. So what have we got here? We've got battery level, we've got our speed in kilometres in the middle there, odometer at the bottom, the different modes. So at the moment we're in eco. If I press the up button, we're in standard. Now we're in sport. So we have 5 different levels of electric assistance. I'll just zoom in on then and we can have a look. So I'm going to use this keypad, the down button and the up button to make changes to the display. So at the moment we're in sport mode, which is electric assistance level 5. So I'm going to put it down to 4, it's still showing in sport. We'll go to 3 and it's saying standard. 2 is staying standard. 1 is showing economy mode. If I press it again, we can go down to 0, which means there'll be no electric assistance at all. So it's just like a normal pedal tricycle in that situation. The screen is pretty good, it's fairly easily readable, but having said that, we're inside. I'd like to find a way to try and adjust the brightness to make it a little bit more brighter. Okay, well that's it for me now, putting this bike together. It's now time to go out and go for a ride. I'm expecting it to be reasonably good. I'm happy with what I've seen so far from Vonride. I don't know what model they're going to call this or classify it in Australia, but it is sort of entry level to mid-market range. I'd say it's more closer to mid-market than it is entry level. Without actually riding it though, it's hard for me to give you any great ideas about how it is in the market, how it's positioned, but I'm going to go for a ride now and we'll make another video showing you how it rides and you'll be able to watch that next. Anyway, thank you for joining me during this quick adventure where we've both learnt how to put it together. We've identified some issues and some benefits of this style of tricycle, and I really look forward to going out for a ride and exploring what it has to offer further. Anyway, Michael from Trike Bike signing out. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.